Welcome to the Church Communications Podcast. We want to help you become a church communications expert. We understand it can be a challenging and ever-changing role because we've worked in the church too, which is why we built a community with over 25,000 church leaders that are ready to support and cheer you on. Your hosts for the show are Allred and Jahng, who want to help equip you to reach more of your congregation and community. This is the place where we'll talk shop with fellow practitioners and professionals. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Hey everybody, my name is Allred from churchcommunications.com. I am so excited today to have Kathleen Cooke join us. Kathleen is an author, a speaker, a producer. She has done so much and I'm so excited to learn more. And so Kathleen, before we begin, we just met. So can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks, Katie, for having me. I love what you're doing. I love all the work that you're doing online. I mean, that's kind of my passion. So my husband and I own a production company in Hollywood, in Burbank, California, actually. Started it in 1991, so it's been going a while. We help Christians use media more effectively and created actually a nonprofit as well called the Influence Lab. So our for-profit business, Cooke Media Group, and Cooke has an E on the end of it.
Right,
Cooke
yes,
E.
Yes.
A lot of people try to find me after interviews and they can't find me because they forget the E.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an E on the end
right,
of my name.
Yes. Very important.
So, Cookie, and so we have a production company in Los Angeles there, and we have done everything from Super Bowl spots to feature films to documentaries. Just won 4 Telly Awards for a documentary we produced, which is
what was
pretty
the documentary?
impressive.
I wanna know.
It's called Inexplicable: How Christianity Spread to the Ends of the Earth.
Oh, wow.
And our focus was a 6-part series, 6 different producers. We did part 5 on Asia, and it was called Asia, the Great Wall and Beyond.
Oh, wow.
So we just finished shooting that right
Oh, that's
before
really cool.
COVID.
Yeah.
And it came out, and so we just won 4 Tellys for that. And then we have the nonprofit, the Influence Lab, at influencelab.com is always where they can find us. And I edit a weekly journal for those of us who work in media and entertainment, are professionals in that. But if you own a cell phone, you're in media these days.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree.
So I invite anyone to come along.
Yeah.
I do some great interviews called INNERVIEW, an interview that is associated with men and women working in the industry, specifically mainly in Hollywood and in leadership. So then I have a weekly blog at KathleenCooke.com. I come from a theatrical background. I was an actress in Hollywood for a number of years. And again, we produced films and documentaries and all sorts of stuff. So.
Oh man, okay, so I always hate too when people ask, how do you do all that? Because I know, I don't know, I just do it. I think God just gives you the capacity to do whatever he dreams of, right?
That's exactly right.
I always hate it when people are like, how do you live such a crazy life? And, how do you keep it back? I feel like that's such a woman question, such a question they ask about. And I'm like, I don't know, God gives you the capacity, right?
He just does. He opens those doors and you step into them. I love that there are 1,500 references in the Bible to the word go. God is a forward-going God.
Right.
And we need to just get our tennis shoes on and keep them tied. Even during COVID, everything was shut down.
Yeah.
It kept us home,
it did.
Which was interesting,
Yeah.
but it didn't keep us from not going anywhere.
Right.
We were online doing stuff. I produced webinars for Influence Lab that I normally would have had in person, which was great. We started pulling in international audiences because of our travels globally that we had been doing, which was awesome. And we're a forward. How do we do it all? We just do
one
it
step after the other.
Turn around and it's done.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. God has a funny way of doing that. Okay, so you were talking about you've been in television, so you've had the opportunity to work in realms that the church hasn't, like in Hollywood. And so, from your perspective, what's the biggest opportunity for the church today to reach more people?
Well, great question, Katie. We all have a cell phone. Let's go back to that.
Yeah, right? We all have this.
We all have that.
With an amazing camera on
and
it.
There are multiple film festivals now.
Right.
Just producing movies on that.
Which is wild.
Excuse.
It is mind-boggling to me that that's a thing.
No excuse
there really is,
to not pick up a camera. And most of the time, the people that are producing it, they started out in junior high because they had one of those in junior high, right? They're pretty adaptable to they know how to run them.
Right.
But we learned during COVID how to create, haven't we? We've all learned from people who've never done it before. So there's just no excuse, and the opportunity is
Right.
huge. It doesn't matter that you're not in Hollywood.
Yep.
And the level of quality even that we're used to viewing has declined to the fact where it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Honestly, the more authentic it is, the better it does. Like, the more it's just like a selfie, the better it does long term. Which is it's so opposite
radical.
of
So
the,
radical.
and so churches are still like wanting to perfect their live stream, and I'm like, don't do that. Look at Jimmy Fallon and what he did during COVID, right? Like with his kids crawling all over him, and he's on the street with his wife, and you can hear the wind hitting the camera. Like, that's not perfect, but
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Well, and here's what I really do instruct people, though, Katie, more than anything, is learn how to tell the story.
Right. Yeah.
Learn how to create a story and create those compelling stories. I'm getting
Right.
ready to do a workshop here at the NRB in a few days
Yeah.
on that compelling story. When you look at what Jesus did, he told stories. We hear that all the time, but actually Jesus told parables.
Right.
Parables are thinking stories.
Right.
He told those stories and walked away.
Right.
And those stories came out of the question. So
Yeah.
what's the question that's being asked right now? What's
Right.
the question? What's the answer that isn't being told from that question?
Right.
And think about what is that answer that we need to clarify.
Yeah.
That's another part of it. So often when we are media producers and content creators, writers, producers, we want to just put it all in a pretty little box and put a bow on it.
Right.
No.
That's the easiest thing to do.
The culture says no.
Right.
We don't want that.
Yeah, and I think especially that next generation. I'm a professor. In my
Yes.
regular day job, I'm a professor. But isn't that funny? That's why I said, when people say how do you have the capacity? I'm like, I don't know. Jesus just gives it to me.
Yeah.
So I'm a professor normally, and just talking to college students, they don't want polish. They just want you to be honest. They just want you to be real with them. They want to see behind the scenes as much as they want to see the polished event. They want to see the aftercut, right? And so they want the director's stuff.
Well, and futurists are telling us that the more we can clarify for people, not bring certainty. They don't want certainty.
Right.
They want clarity.
Right.
And working, I work a lot with the Middle East, specifically a lot of women who I try to work with within the Middle Eastern culture, the Islamic culture. They are used to being led to who Jesus is.
Right.
And then allowing the Holy Spirit to speak to us. That's what a parable is about. Jesus just opened the story up and walked away because he knew the Holy Spirit was going to be there working in us, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stories that we need to be having. That's the clarity that we need to be bringing to our audience.
Just to start the conversation,
Just start the conversation.
Exactly. How can we start more gospel conversations in general? I was actually talking about Asia. I was in India in January of 2020. When the pandemic was announced in China. It was just and I'd never been overseas before.
Well, we were there in November 2020.
Oh, okay, so you went
you
went right at the bad time for India. So So I feel you, and I love the Indian people. They left such a mark on me, and we got to teach. We went through with a ministry on podcasting, and launched this podcast in the first 2 different Indian languages, which was really cool. But digital can reach everyone. It doesn't matter where, and I think that's why I was so passionate about the Middle East too, about how can we reach more people, and I don't know. There's so much more that the church can do, right?
So much more.
That we just haven't even dreamed of yet.
Well, Facebook is the largest country in the world.
Right. Yeah.
So who's producing shows in that country?
Right.
Who's telling their stories?
Right.
Who's planning churches?
Yes.
Hello, let's look at it
Right.
not from a geographical point of view, but from a cultural point.
Right.
With their eyeballs there. Let's get there.
And let's figure out how to use it the best way that we can. I know a lot of people will be afraid. Don't be afraid.
No.
Jesus said, stuff is gonna happen, and trolls are trolls no matter what. But the trolls are who you're trying to reach.
That's right.
And so, how can we at least get in front of their eyes and into their ears more, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And so it's Hollywood. It doesn't matter.
I know. I feel like I could just chat all day. It's fine. And I'm maybe who cares
Hollywood
what my
is great,
questions
though.
are?
It
But
has
yeah,
its place, but
no, it does.
You don't have to be there.
No, yeah, right. Hollywood is where we, which is that sounds silly, but but
it's a generality almost these days.
Yeah.
And there is a reason for it. There are the big studio films. There are, eventually, if at a certain level, you are going to have the Hollywood expertise and becomes
Oh, for sure.
in it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to start there.
Right. Yeah. You can start where you are.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so some of your work is around global media missions, which is what we've talked a little bit about. I believe many church leaders have not ever thought of media mission work, right? Like I was just telling you, I went to India to work with about a podcast.
Yeah.
So people, that's like foreign to some people. Can you share more about that work? What is it, and how can church leaders be paying attention to that?
So Katie, that really is the reason we started the Influence Lab. We started traveling. We started being asked to come over and speak and teach and work. And I've taught acting classes in India, in Asia, in Singapore, in Europe. I've gone all over teaching theatrical acting from my point of view. We've taught producing and directing.
Right.
But there's cultural aspects to it.
Yeah.
Specifically, you talked about India. Well, they have Bollywood.
Yeah.
They have a lot of overacting.
Yeah, they really do.
Different
Oh man,
kind of
I
acting,
saw a YouTube
right?
channel from
Hello.
a ministry there that was wild.
They produce like 2,000 movies
Yeah.
a year, and studios in Hollywood,
Yeah.
the big studios, produce about 200.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, my devotional hope for today begins with a
which we'll talk
story
about.
from India. And it begins with a story about acting or being.
Yeah.
Are you acting a Christian or are you being a Christian? And so,
That's good.
So we from that point of view, it's important. The Influence Lab is all about helping Christians use media effectively where they are.
Yeah.
With the culture they're speaking, the cultural things that are happening to them, the cultural things around them. So often, for years and years, we tried to produce media in America and make it work in India, and Asia, and Africa, and places like that, but they didn't resonate with the cultural places there. What's wonderful about our cultural world today is that we have the ability to train the people there. So the Influence Lab is all about bringing those professionals in to teach them how to do it, to teach them how to speak the language, to produce in their own style and their own things that's going to resonate with those cultures where they are. So important.
Yeah. Okay. So, how can a church get involved? Is there a way for churches to get involved with Influence Labs?
Absolutely. So, what we've done in the past is our home church, for instance, Bel Air in Los Angeles, had us go over to Cairo one year. This is about 2018 before COVID and everything hit. So we were over there in Cairo for a week. We brought in a lighting producer because they specifically had outdoor events, needed help with their lighting. I taught acting. We brought in a producer. We brought in a director. We brought in a social media person. We brought in a writer. So we brought in a team of 6 because those were the areas which that church, and there was several ministries that came in. We even had an underground church come in from Iran.
Yeah.
2 or 3 because they could come to Cairo.
Right.
And we were able to train them on how to shoot things a little bit better, how to light things a little bit better. I taught acting classes on how to be a real person other than an acting person.
Right.
We taught directing aspects, all of those things. We put that team together for a week to train those professionals, and then they were able to use those skills to improve what they were doing. So that's one aspect of Influence Lab. Then I produce webinars now online. I've done in-person gatherings as well to try to encourage, to connect those people who are working in the industry. So we've had books written because of the connections we've had. I've got projects that have been put together and written and produced because of the events and the gatherings we've had in person in the past. Now, because of COVID, of course, we've put a lot of things online so they can go there and see the events that we put together, encouragement. But a way of training them, again, on how to use those tools to tell a great story. Yeah. Because if the story isn't good, we're turning it off. You know, the culture in the world today will cut you off in 2 to 3 seconds, right? We've got the 100%. We're scrolling through our phones. We're gone. Yeah. Even in person, Katie, it's called the 8-second rule. I'm going to size you up in 8 seconds and decide whether or not I'm going to stay with you or want to watch you in
Right.
person.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're a fast looking crowd these
For
days,
sure.
and
Yeah.
we're a fast clicking off crowd these days.
Yeah, no,
So
I
we need to
completely
be ready.
believe that.
We need to be ready.
You kind of have to have a shtick sometimes when you meet people, like, instead of just saying, oh, what do? You know, like, you have to think of a little something more, you know?
Well, I catch, that's what we're looking for, right?
Right.
That unique thing.
Right.
And I challenge people that we work with to find that unique something that God has instilled in you.
Yeah.
You are not the same as your sister or your brother that you were raised in the same
Right.
house and ate every meal with growing up.
Right.
You are a different person and a different personality. So what tap into that? What makes you special? What makes you unique? And then those are the skills and the things that you can work from, but then also ask your question saying, I've got these skills and tools. But what is it that I hate, that I need to fix?
Yeah.
What's the problem that's out there that needs to be solved, that question that hasn't been answered?
Right.
And go after those things. So often in what we want to produce something of passion.
Right.
I love this thing.
Right.
So when I've spoken at universities to
Yeah.
writers and in places like that, I'll say maybe that you are a writer, but you hate the way romantic movies are portrayed on screen.
Yeah.
So write it a different
I know,
way.
yeah.
Go a different way.
Yeah.
See, those are just tools, but that is the thing that God then propels you to fix and
Right.
to change and to find something unique and different about that's going to set you apart.
I love that. Man, there's so many things that to bring to mind my story too, and I love that. And so I feel like that probably leads a little into your book. So let's go ahead and talk about your book. Can you tell the wonderful people about this book?
Yeah, so let me tell you a story.
Okay, yeah, tell me a story.
So this book came about just because we had been shooting a project in London in 2005. Or two. Oh gosh, one of my brain is dead right now. I think it's 2002, sorry.
Yeah.
It was London's 9/11, basically.
Okay.
We were there to shoot a documentary on William Wilberforce.
Oh, wow.
And we were headed to the British Library that morning in a van, which we would have been in the tube, in the underground subway. And had we not had all our film equipment, our crew with us. And we were out on the street, approaching the British Library, and the tunnel exploded beneath us. Several minutes, lots of people died.
Yeah.
Then on the street next to us, the bomb went off in the bus down the street from us.
Wow.
Consequently, we didn't make it to the British Library. But,
Right.
it was the first time in 100 years that theaters closed down.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it was very dramatic. Interesting time to be there. So we walked in with the curator. We had laid out several things we wanted to film that day and talked to her about and to film for the documentary we're working on. But she walked in first and she said, because of the events that happened yesterday, I thought you might like to look at this.
Yeah.
And she handed me Anne Boleyn's Bible.
Oh, wow.
And Anne had scratched her name Annie on the end of it.
Oh, that's so fun. Yeah.
And it was like God physically spoke to me
Yeah.
at that moment and said, this is why I brought you here. I want you to remember this.
Yeah.
I want you to see the importance of the Word of God.
Yeah.
And when you look at Anne Boleyn's story, we don't know all of it, of course, it wasn't written down.
Right.
Anne Boleyn was Henry VIII's second wife,
Right.
if you remember.
I remember that.
Catherine of Aragon, he had to divorce. They've been married for like 20-some years,
Yeah.
if I remember right, 7 years or something. And Anne was his only wife. She refused to sleep with him before they were married. She would not get married to him until he had physically divorced. It was a time when William Tyndale had just been able to print the Bible in English so that the normal person could start reading it. She had been reading it, I'm sure. But
it seems like in a very personal way, right?
Very personal way. And so all of those things, there's a lot in this story.
Yeah.
The bottom line is this was the Bible that she held before they cut her head off.
Yeah.
The last thing she had. It was the most precious thing she had.
Yeah.
And it was like the Lord said, we need to re-examine in our lives how precious the Word of God is.
Yeah.
That it may not be with us.
Yeah.
You may not have it. Are you memorizing it? Are you really find that you're passionate about it?
Right.
Fast forward another year or two, we started working with the Center for Bible Engagement. They did $1 million study, no, you're not sure, an 8-year study on the habits and activities of Christians.
Yeah.
What we do that actually changes the direction of our lives.
Yeah.
So they studied how often we went to church, prayed, listened to preachers, all of those kind of things. The one thing that came out was Bible engagement was the single most important thing that positively made changes in someone's lives.
Yeah.
And it needed to be done 4 or more times a week.
Oh, wow.
That if you're only engaging personally 1 to 3 times a week, you really statistically make no different changes than someone who never reads the Bible.
Right.
So, physical trainers tell us we have to work out 4 times a week.
Yeah.
What's happening to our inside soul that's going to live for
Right.
eternity? We know it will.
Right.
Are you working it out 4 times
Right.
a week? What are you doing to engage in God with
Right.
God 4 times personally?
Yeah.
So that's where the 4
That's what
comes
this- that's what
for,
this
Hope
is for.
4 today.
Okay.
So it's based on
Yeah.
a 4-day-a-week format.
Okay, so there's weeks.
And then at the end of each week is a journaling aspect.
Okay.
Now, I had to argue with my publisher about that.
Yeah.
Because normally you have a journal.
Right.
And you have your
then
devotion,
they
right?
wanted to sell too, right?
Wrong. I
And you're
think
like,
we
no,
have-
this is what I wanted.
We've really blown it. We
Yeah.
have really blown it and not passing on our engagement
Yeah.
that we personally have with the next generation.
Right.
Because many of the questions that they are asking, we've been asking, and our
Yeah.
sisters in the future will
Oh,
be
yeah.
asking. Why are we here? Where are we going? What's it all about, right?
Yep.
And so this gives an opportunity for the reader and the engager. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a
No, I love that. You
it-
can
it-
pass it on, which is
pass
what
it
what
on.
you're I think
Yeah.
you're trying to say. What I love
Yes.
too is my great grandmother, Susie Mayville. My great grandmother Susie, she wrote her prayers. I have journals and journals of my great grandmother's prayers. I don't think she graduated high school. From rural Alabama, was a farmer's wife, and I have journals and journals of my great grandmother's prayers where she was praying for me and she didn't know me yet, her great grandchildren, and like her answering those same questions of what is life for, and she, I can just remember her like saying in one of them, like, try your best whenever possible to make peace with people, like whenever, and I was like, that's a great lesson.
And you're listening to that, right?
Right.
Hello.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about.
And so to be handed that as, a product of the prayers of giants, to me is something that is irreplaceable. And more people should do it. Like, to be handed a legacy of prayer is wild.
Well, that's what I want to do with
Yeah,
this.
I love it.
That's why it's so important. We need to
Yeah,
pass that on.
especially
We used to
because a lot of
pass our
people aren't
Bibles
used to
on.
doing
You know,
that.
if the family Bible used to be
Right.
passed on. Can
Yep.
we pass our phone on now? Is that what we're
Yeah, I
doing?
can't
No,
do that.
I don't think so.
Right. Yeah.
I know when my parents died, they left us estate things and stuff. But
Yeah.
what did my brother and I fight over?
Yep.
We fought over their Bibles.
Yeah.
We wanted their Bibles. We wanted those notes that they'd written inside those Bibles
Yeah.
and those thoughts. So important.
Yeah.
So that's what Hope for today is about.
Yeah.
Katie, the reason people are not engaging in the Bible 4 or more times a week is because they're too busy and too distracted with media.
Yeah.
They don't know where to begin.
Right.
And they think it's a historical poem.
Right.
You
Sure.
know, it's a place to read
Sure.
poetry.
It's not a living document.
It's not a living document.
Yes.
So Hope for Today is based on
Yeah.
then stories.
Yeah,
A lot
sure.
of fun stories of my past travels in Hollywood,
Yeah.
all of those kind of things that God said to me,
Yeah.
that I'm passing now on to you as the reader. That
Yeah,
we can now
love that.
continue to think about it, ask a question at the end of
Right.
each of the day,
Yeah.
so that you can then write that engagement right in the book.
Okay.
And
I
you
love
can pass
that.
it on.
Yeah. That's
so,
fantastic.
yeah.
Okay, so I know that that you love to empower women in leadership, and that's something we've been doing at Church Communications through She Leads Church. So She Leads Church last year we had 7,000 people involved, which is just wild. It doubled. Like we had 3,000 the first year, to have 7,000 like this past year just tells me that God's at work and that He's doing something. And I really do believe like revitalization, like women, like that's why Jesus came to women, right?
That's right.
Like when He was like, we're gonna get the good news out, like I'm gonna come to these women and they're gonna help me get this good news delivered. And so I would love to know if you could share some thoughts about like women in leadership.
Yeah, well, let me tell you a hidden story I don't know whether you have ever read or paid attention to the story of Huldah.
Okay.
She's in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. I have a wonderful book that I love called Bible Women, What They Said and Why It Matters.
Okay.
And it's done by a whole group of Episcopal women and priests who went in the Bible and counted the number of words that women speak in the Bible.
Sure.
So we've always heard about Esther and Ruth and
of course.
Mother Mary of Jesus and Mary of Bethany. I mean, we all have our hero girls, right? Hidden stories.
Right.
Do you know that some of those women speak the least in the Bible?
Right.
They speak the least amount of words. And if words matter,
Right.
and you're paying attention to the words that matter, you're going to find some hidden gems in the Bible.
Yeah.
Based on the number of words. She said Huldah is number 3 in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Most people have never heard of her.
That's crazy.
She was during the time of the King Josiah. Now, King Josiah was that child's king.
Yeah.
He became a king at the age of 9.
Yes.
By the time he was 18, he had been schooled by priests, been raised by the priests and people around him, and loved God and wanted to change the culture. He wanted to be a historic king. He wanted to be a leader of a godly kingdom, God's leader, king.
Yeah.
And so he said, let's rebuild the temple. And so they start rebuilding the temple, and they find the book of meaning, the book of laws, the Torah, been hidden and in the rubble. And the assistant to the high priest, Hilkiah, comes to him and starts reading him the Torah. And he rents his clothes, and he says to the high priest assistant, not even to the high priest, go find me what we're going to do. Because this kingdom is going to hell in a handbag, so to speak.
Yeah.
We're all doomed. So who does he go to? Well, he goes to the wife of the dresser of the high priest.
Oh, wow.
Now you tell me,
The wife of the
dresser of the high priest. How did the high priest know about Huldah, who was
Right.
this little bitty woman
Yes.
sewing his clothes
Yes.
together? She couldn't even go dress
Yeah.
the high priest.
Right.
So she had to have some kind of influence
Sure.
on the high
Yeah.
priest, so
Right.
that when a high priest was told by the king,
Yes.
you better go find her, your
Yes.
life's on the line.
Yeah.
And the Bible said he went directly to
Yeah.
Huldah.
Yeah.
To Huldah. This
Sounds
little
like she
lady
was
in
known
the
for maybe
background.
changing culture, even though.
You know, this nobody kind of woman.
Sure.
Here we are. And so often in what we do as women, first of all,
Right.
we're just behind the scenes.
Sure.
We're just so-and-so's wife. We're just that mom. We're Katie's, mother or grandmother or whatever. We are just those women. And we feel that way sometimes.
Yeah.
God says, I see you.
Right.
I love the fact that in the story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar, that Hagar was tossed, ran away, and she's the only woman in the Bible who gets to name God. She names God herself, Allred, the God who sees.
Yeah.
God
That's
sees
definitely one of
us,
my favorite
women.
names of God. Yeah.
God sees us.
Right.
So go back to my story of Huldah. Here the priest goes to Huldah and says, what are we going to do? The king's going to kill me if I don't have the right information. He doesn't go to his other high priest. He doesn't go to himself.
Right.
He goes to Huldah.
Yeah.
And Huldah says, okay, this is what God says. And she says 3 times, God's perfect number, 3 times. Thus saith the Lord. Not me, the Lord saying this. So that's our first lesson we can learn as women leaders.
Right.
Make sure your message is coming from Him.
Right.
Not your own desires, not your own, And what I love about this story is Huldah didn't even say to the high priest, no, you take me to the king and I'll tell him.
Yeah.
Because, it's me who's the really star here.
Right.
I'm the one that really knows the stuff. You have no idea.
Sure.
That's not what Huldah does.
Right.
She says to Hilkiah, the high priest, here's what's going to happen. It's God talking. And everything historically that she said, go back and read the story.
Yeah.
Every single thing. She said, yes, your kingdom's going to fall, but it's not going to fall now because you have engaged with God and because you are recognizing me that it's going to fall. So be ready for that. Everything she says, this is what's going to say, thus saith the Lord. And I love the fact that she was able then to say, I'm good with that.
Right.
I have done what I've been called to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and be the wife of the dresser of the high priest and be ready for whatever God has for me next. It's a fabulous leadership story that's never told.
Right.
And I think it's not
haven't
told.
heard that on a Sunday morning.
No.
You know?
And that's what I was just going to say. I think a lot of times we haven't heard that story because we've been led by a lot of male preachers over the years.
Sure. Yeah.
And a lot of male preachers don't want to highlight a woman being in leadership position, which is sad. Yeah. We're changing that in today's culture and world, and I think that's happening.
Right.
But that's our history.
Yeah, 100%.
So we can either be negative about it, we can either resent that, or we can just learn from that and say, we're going to be a new generation that's going to listen to women and to the fact that they have a place in God's world.
That's right. Yeah, and if anything, Jesus elevated women so many times to places of leadership. And Romans 16 is a list of women who were serving in the New Testament church. So, anyways.
Huldah speaks over 400 words in the Bible. Mary, mother of Jesus, speaks about 200.
That's crazy.
The only other person above her is Esther, and which is a whole book.
Right.
Maybe it might be Ruth. But those are the only two.
Yeah.
Huldah. Nobody knows.
Right. I love it.
So I teach women. It doesn't matter where you are.
Right.
It doesn't matter that you don't think you're being seen or heard or cared about.
Because God does. Yeah.
God sees you.
Exactly.
He's your Elroy.
Right.
And even the story about Hagar, she goes back and she follows and she's obedient. I love the scripture in the Bible that says, even though Jesus was God's son, he learned obedience through his suffering.
Right.
We don't learn enough obedience. We're not willing to go through that suffering, are we? And in order to learn obedience, we need to learn obedience through our suffering. We're going to have it in our culture and world.
Right.
So how are you going to be obedient to that? Love that.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up, but I would love to know, is there ways that we can connect with you online?
Yeah, I'd love it. Yes, of course. So I'm on influencelab.com, of course, influencelabwomen.com. I'm at Kathleen Cooke Official, and Kathleen Cooke, Twitter is Kathleen Cooke LA. Our general handles, Instagram, I'm Kathleen Cooke Official again, and on Instagram, Influence Lab Official. I have a weekly blog again on my website, KathleenCooke.com. Cook has an E on the end.
Right.
And then the weekly journal, and it's free. It's all free. Just sign up. I'd love for you to talk. I'd love for you to hear back from you from this interview.
Yeah,
and the conversation is what we're all about, and I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
We need to be in relationship with each other.
Yeah.
We can still do that online, isn't it? It's
right.
great.
I know. It's that's how I made all my friends, really.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kathleen. I really do appreciate it. And again, I just want to say, go pick up a copy of Hope for Today. It's come out on paperback now, and we're really excited to have it. So
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Church Communications Podcast with Katie Allred and Kenny Jahng. If you liked our show today and want to learn more, you can join our Facebook group with over 25,000 church leaders. Simply search for Church Communications on Facebook. And if you liked today's episode, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. It's the most impactful way you can help us reach more church leaders and equip them to become better communicators for the church. And finally, don't forget to check out our website at churchcommunications.com. Thanks for listening.